Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by Techstrong and OpsMX. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting presentation ahead of us, but first I have just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion or you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live webinar today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in using the Q&A tab on the right side of the screen. And that's also where you'll find our chat tab, where we want you to speak with your other audience members or let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about during our discussion. We do have 3 polls that we will scatter throughout today's webinar, so we really want your participation in those. And if you navigate to the handouts tab, you'll also find some resources to help accompany today's webinar. Finally, at the conclusion of our session today, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around. Our topic today is using DevSecOps for continuous compliance and security automation. And I'm joined today by Ashley Owen, Head of Product Marketing at OpsMX, and Gopi Rabala, CTO of OpsMX. So thank you both for being here with me today. Ash, I'm going to let you get us started.
Thank you very much, Cody, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Delighted to be here. I'm coming to you from a very wet and windy Portland on the west coast, and my colleague Gopi is further down south, where I'm sure the weather is drier. So with that,
it's actually wet today.
It's actually wet today. Okay, good. So let's get going. As I like to say, we're really going to discuss here today how customers use DevSecOps for continuous compliance and security automation. And we've got, I think, an interesting presentation set up. So let's get cracking. Firstly, let's start with the state of security and compliance automation. It's perhaps come as no surprise to anybody here, but given the significant increase in malicious attacks in recent years, organizations are shifting from reactive to proactive, or preventive to diagnostic approaches. And teams that integrate security practices through their entire software supply chain deliver software quickly, reliably, and safely. And while it's easy for us to emphasize the importance of security and suggest that teams need to prioritize it, doing so requires several changes from traditional information security methods. Here at OpsMX, we recommend and support integrating security into your continuous delivery pipeline, improving software delivery and operational performance, and improving organizational performance by leveraging the following practices. Security testing. So test security requirements as part of an automated testing process. Integrate security review into every phase of the entire software delivery lifecycle. That, of course, includes the continuous delivery pipeline. And conduct security reviews of all major new features. And one of my personal favorites, because I used to be a developer, is using build pre-approved codes. And what do I mean by that? Pre-approved, easy-to-use libraries, packages, and now toolchains, as well as processes for developers and IT operators to use in their work. Imagine for a moment if there were a continuous compliance and security toolchain. Maybe it's your toolchain, not necessarily mine. It won't have all the same tools in it, but it's an interesting conversation, and we'll probably have that one a bit later. And of course, within that state of security and compliance automation, integral to what we do at OpsMX is to integrate compliance as code into the continuous delivery pipeline. And I'm going to let Gopi touch upon this a bit later in the presentation. Interestingly, as I have observed an evolving pattern of practices in continuous compliance and security, I'd be curious if you agree. Many, many years ago when I started in this industry, we were very descriptive. We were monitoring, we were doing some visualization, we were conducting static analysis. And now we've moved into a diagnostic phase where we're doing automated anomaly detection, event correlation, and root cause analysis. And of course, we can go beyond diagnostic and maybe become more productive, where we're doing productive failure analysis or predictive resource allocation. And then potentially my favorite, where we become prescriptive. We're now full optimization and we're doing intelligent automation. So this is a fantastic topic for conversation. So let's discuss then the next security and compliance, and where does this fit and what does it mean? Among our cohort of customers, there is a growing demand to integrate security and policy governance into the software delivery pipeline. Firstly, it often starts with the need to ensure that all artifacts within the software delivery pipeline are being deployed into the production environment and are certified by the security scans, and no changes are made after the tests are completed. Here, real-time assessment of any security findings will speed triage, speed approvals, and maintain your delivery flow. Next, the challenge is to ensure that the security and compliance of the delivery workflow itself, from code check-in or code complete to multi-cloud, on-prem or hybrid deployment, and through automated policies, ensure separation of duties in application administration and application deployment by maintaining access control to the cluster and secrets used by an application. And finally, within security and compliance, as your deliveries scale in volume and velocity, the challenge is to provide visibility into the supply chain of running artifacts in the production environment, and speedily rectifying vulnerabilities found in libraries or application components as quickly as possible. So in summary, I would say that we support the ability to integrate your supply chain security into your delivery pipeline to improve resilience. Within the delivery pipeline itself, we ensure that you manage your keys and secrets, and you're hardening the security of your CI and CD pipeline. And within the operational environment, we're leveraging least privilege access controls, so ensuring that only the right people can access the production environment. One thing I'd like to discuss is when you do this and you've automated the pipeline with security and compliance, we've seen among our customers a growing demand to integrate security and compliance. You can see here it's often manual. But whether transforming or simply improving your software delivery process, perhaps through value stream mapping, we have observed significant before and after benefits resulting from the implementations of our open, intelligent, continuous delivery platform, which we often call ISD. We welcome the opportunity to partner with you through the transformation or continuous improvement initiative and help you achieve some of these goals. As you can see here, our cohort of customers has experienced tremendous benefits, including the ability to manage a substantial increase in pipelines, really scaling their systems, and increasing volume and velocity of releases. And because we're addressing the burden of human toil through intelligent automation, these customers have significantly reduced verification and approval times. And now, of course, we've automated compliance and security. We now can increase software delivery performance further, resulting in faster discovery, detection, and remediation of security violations and vulnerabilities. So maybe we could run the quick poll before I go into the interswitch. Cody, I meant to run a poll. Could you throw up the first poll, please? So this will come up. How do you ensure compliance of enterprise policies for your delivery pipelines? And the options are manual verification. Perhaps you have a custom service integrated with your CD pipeline. Option number 3 would be an OPA based policy check, or nothing. So submit your answer and then hopefully we can take a quick look. Because we're very interested in understanding what you're currently doing for automating security and compliance within your delivery pipeline. Looks like the results are coming up. Let's close the poll. Excellent. So Gopi, your initial thoughts on what you're seeing here? No, I don't hear Gopi. Okay, so it looks
Sorry
like it's... Oh, there he is.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Sorry about the audio there. These results are quite interesting, right? So we see a higher percentage of organizations using some kind of checks, and we also are seeing the OPA-based policy checks being a higher percentage than we would expect. That's encouraging.
Right. Right, and it wouldn't surprise us at all, right? I mean, that kind of makes sense in terms of where people are.
That's correct.
Okay, let's go back to the slides. Excellent, thank you very much for that. So let's discuss a couple of case studies. One is InterSwitch, the other is Symphony. We'll run another poll in between the two of them. So let me introduce you to InterSwitch. InterSwitch is a leading digital payment and commerce player in Africa. And they've been instrumental in transforming Africa's payment landscape. Their challenge was to deliver frequent innovation and provide sustainable payment solutions. And they had a number of challenges, or should we say problems. Script-based deployment was time-consuming. InterSwitch, like many organizations, migrated from monolithic software to microservices and containerized applications. And initially, of course, their various teams wrote numerous scripts using Jenkins and SSH plugins to automate deployments into multiple environments. But as the pace of innovation increased, they realized the non-standard deployment process involved maintaining these scripts that made software deployments slow and complex. Secondly, they need to comply with financial regulation, and that was challenging. Of course, being in the financial industry, InterSwitch has to strictly comply with many regulations and standards. And it was particularly challenging for the IT team to manually address policy checks and adhere to SDLC regulations set by the compliance team. Moreover, it was difficult for their compliance managers to audit and investigate non-compliance issues. So really, InterSwitch needed a streamlined, modern continuous delivery process that eliminated excessive dependence on tribal knowledge with respect to adherence to compliance requirements and handle their scale. And they adopted OpsMX, a scalable, modern, continuous delivery platform to speed and safely deploy apps into Kubernetes through our ISD platform. InterSwitch has successfully adopted our solution to automate its end-to-end software delivery pipeline, seamlessly integrating its DevOps toolchain. This includes a code management system in terms of Bitbucket, a CI system in terms of Jenkins, a vulnerability scanning tool in terms of SonarQube, and an artifact repository in terms of JFrog. Their developers and DevOps engineers are now using OpsMX to securely deploy applications into AKE and on-prem Kubernetes behind the firewall. Today, InterSwitch is delivering applications at scale with nearly 100 developers, 10 DevOps engineers and project managers using OpsMX ISD to orchestrate the deployment and delivery of their payment applications. Their DevOps team is automating canary analysis and estimating the risk of new releases. OpsMX Autopilot automatically gathers metrics of canary and baseline pods and applies AI ML to perform risk assessment and enabling automated decisions to roll out or roll back based on the risk score. Autopilot is also helping the DevSecOps teams address regulatory and compliance concerns by allowing them to define and automate and enforce policies within their delivery pipeline. All software passes through these automated policy gates, ensuring security and compliance before reaching production. So their code check-in to production times have now been reduced from days to hours, as everything is streamlined under one umbrella, achieving a 70% reduction in lead time. With OpsMX, we are providing the ability to identify deployment failures in the process of software delivery with end-to-end visibility, and we track the progress at all times, from dev through UAT to production. And their compliance stakeholders get an audit report for a particular time period, or can get an audit report for a particular time period of any policy violations, pipeline failures, or bad deployments. So Cody, could we throw up the second poll, or we break this up? So what is driving your choice of new DevOps tool chains in your organization? Is it cloud migration and cloud native architectures? Is it improved developer productivity and delivery cadence? Is it there is a need for visibility and traceability and auditability into the flow of the work? Or perhaps it's all of the above. So we'll give that a few seconds and see what you come up with, particularly in the context of security and compliance automation. I'd be very interested in what we're hearing. Yeah, interesting. So all of the above is winning quite handsomely, I would suggest. Need for visibility, traceability, and auditability also looking high on the list. Improved developer and productivity and cloud migration. I don't see a number up there, but very interesting. Excellent. I think that doesn't surprise me either, and that looks to be. I was expecting most people to have all of the above. I think they're all pretty important. All right, let's go back to the move the slide. So switch gears and let's talk about another customer, Symphony. Now Symphony is interesting. Symphony was what in DevOps terms we'd call a unicorn. A unicorn project that offered a highly secure and scalable cloud-based messaging and collaboration platform for financial institutions of all sizes. And they use bots and automation to improve everyday workflows. The challenge for Symphony was to quickly deliver innovation to a rapidly expanding clientele without compromising security. So here's the security theme. They provide a collaboration platform that's highly regulated and renders services for millions of customers. Meeting these rigorous standards means maintaining the utmost level of security and regulatory compliance. Moreover, they were looking to deploy a major update to the platform that will enable a multi-tenant system, allowing Symphony to allocate dedicated resources to each client to achieve maximum performance. One particular pain point with their existing system was using a CI value stream that was creating a bottleneck in achieving maximum performance. Their distributed SaaS platform, with an ever-growing number of pipelines and software delivery environments, was increasing the burden on human resources and increased infrastructure costs. Maintaining compliance standards with an increased scale of the operation was becoming quite difficult. And any security vulnerability, and this probably applies to all of us, introduced during delivery, in their minds would cripple the business. So to avoid this, Symphony looked for a new modern continuous delivery solution for both infrastructure and software that they could retrofit into their existing platform. And of course, they wanted to do this all within 90 days. So what were the challenges that we addressed? Firstly, the need for agile infrastructure. Symphony applied changes to their production system using manual steps and complex scripts on Terraform. Of course, we integrate with Terraform. Idling systems were hard to manage, and it was inflating costs. And the process for deploying new infrastructure to onboard new customers was just too long. It needed to become significantly shorter and simplified. They also wanted to focus on their core expertise, which was building their communication and collaboration platform and not building out a CD solution. Number 3, the need for hardened CD platform and security features. Security and complete confidentiality are in their DNA. And to attain a higher velocity of deployments, Symphony needed to rebuild the process of secure software delivery. Everything from access to authorization, certificates management to audit, from internal system communication to external integrations, needed a flexible framework. The expectation was to put together a verification check through the entire delivery process that provided deep insights into the risks, informing approvals, and maintaining velocity. And finally, they needed to meet demands of the business. Moving changes from development to test and finally to production was complex. Tenant infrastructure deployment was not keeping pace with the needs, and clients had to wait for their product. With expanding pipelines, their site reliability engineers were burdened with troubleshooting, and this increased the triage time as well. To tackle the problem instantly, they needed a platform that guided the site reliability engineers to the problem area rather than wasting their time troubleshooting the source of the problem. And perhaps this quote from the SVP of engineering at Symphony, I think, emphasizes this. Isn't solving the issue more fun than finding where the fault is? I must admit, I really love that one. The solution, of course, was to automate onboarding of new tenants, and they've done so through automating the entire end-to-end CI/CD process using the OpsMX ISD platform. With the help of target blueprints, they were able to automate pipelines from code commit to production deployment. Their blueprints ensure that pipelines are replicated with a click of a button to onboard a new customer. This allowed Symphony to reduce the time to onboard new clients by 98%. It now takes 10 minutes to get the infrastructure and platform ready for the client. As Symphony continuously increases the number of services provided to customers, these automated pipelines with granular access controls ensure safety and security. We're also addressing cost optimization, supporting deep integration with Terraform, and Symphony is using OpsMX to create a new infrastructure deployment solution that automates the creation and destruction of test environments through the application lifecycle, fully integrated, of course, into the delivery process. They're also using the security framework from OpsMX for development, test, and SRE teams. Our delivery intelligence, data and delivery intelligence layer, Autopilot, relieves the burden that the SREs previously had to manage. And we're also allowing them to define and enforce policies through their pipeline, with AI algorithms managing compliance checks at every stage of the pipeline. And this red flags erroneous codes or configurations, which notifies the SREs to act. So in many respects, their SREs are now freed from the daily toil of troubleshooting, and teams have seen a significant improvement in velocity without compromising security. Let's run the next poll now, please, Cody, and then I'll hand over to Gopi. What benefit do you see AI ML playing in your software delivery performance? A couple of options here. 1, automating manual tasks. 2, provide learning insights. 3, eliminating inefficiencies. 4, saving time to analyze metrics and logs. give you a few seconds, and I'll ask Gopi to respond when he sees some of the data, because he's up next.
So interesting results. Okay, so we would think the automating manual tasks wouldn't be at the top, but it's almost equal to the other two, providing insights and analyzing
Yeah,
data.
I think those two kind of go together, right? Save time to analyze and providing insights.
Right. Very interesting.
Do you want me to move the slide, or are you okay moving the slide?
Yeah, let's move to the next slide. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, Ash, for walking us through how these organizations have adopted compliance automation to achieve much better delivery speed and reliabilities in their delivery. What we want to do now is look at what is this compliance of code as code, and what are the requirements for us to be able to achieve them in repeatable fashion while supporting change management. What we have seen is the process changes are always there in the organizations, and what we want the system to do is provide the ability to support the changes without a huge amount of activity around it. So when we speak to our organizations, the governance and security policy enforcement are generally inconsistent, ad hoc, time-consuming, and error-prone. That's primarily because they're dependent on the tribal knowledge or wiki checklists or hard-coded scripts for achieving their compliance in their software delivery. Of course, this leads to regulatory and business risk, and most of the organizations agree that they need to improve on that. And particularly with the increase in the speed of the delivery, it is important to eliminate manual steps or hard coding different checks and also provide better visibility for the compliance checks in the delivery process. Of course, everyone, as Ash went through, the security should be made integral to the delivery process of your software and not a parallel process to your delivery. Okay. So the idea behind this compliance as code is to enable automation and reliably enforce governance and security policies across the delivery pipeline. Some examples might include, how do you provide Sarbanes-Oxley compliance in the software delivery process, or specific role-based access controls in providing the approvals in the checks before deploying to production. Right? These approvals are, for the Sarbanes-Oxley, for example, could be a direct or indirect, in the sense that a developer checking in the code in the Git is the act that the developer is triggering the pipeline, and that's one set of person that's approving to deliver the code. And the second set of approvals can come from the quality assurance or the operations verifying the data for the testing or security checks that go with that delivery and approving to be deployed to the production. this approval needs that visibility into what checks were done, what the results of the checks, and they can come to use it Slack ops or chat ops or any of the other additional processes, which is sort of irrelevant. But essentially, they need the visibility into what checks were done and may be able to verify that there were two different individuals that are verifying the deployment to the production. Okay. So the visibility for what we see, for example, the security checks can be your static code analysis or binary scans or dynamic code analysis. Any of these, along with the test results, right? You want to look at the performance and functional test passing for them to deploy to the production. So you can see a pattern here. The visibility requires the data around these checks that are being done on the code that is being delivered. And the results of these different tests that are done to be able to make that decision. And being able to fetch this data and apply some kind of policies or rules on them gives the organization much faster ability to deliver. And these policies that one defines are done by the people who are from the central organization that may be different from the people who are actually setting up these delivery pipelines. Right? So what that requires is the ability for the organization not to set these policies in some text form in a document, but some kind of rules that can be reused and applied as code. So that's one of the things that we will talk about on how to achieve them. So usually when we talk about these, there's some skepticism, can this compliance as code be achieved? But once we go through the how to do it and the return on investment, most of the customers are convinced to take that step in automating those policies. So let's look at the next slide. So now let's talk a little bit about how to achieve this security and compliance automation. When we look at the delivery workflow, there are certain steps that we expect to happen within the delivery workflow. And generally, these are the pipelines. These are directed acyclic kind of a graphs with each of these nodes representing a specific step. And then each of these steps, we expect them to be self-contained in their functionality. For example, there is a build step, there is a static code analysis step, or integration step, or dynamic code analysis, or binary scans, or test automation. All of these are individual steps that we expect and that are done in certain sequence. Some of these in parallel, some of them in sequence. This is what we would expect that to be a pipeline. Conceptually, there are three steps that we think of in achieving the security and compliance automation. Right? One is to provide the guardrails in the delivery pipeline, ensuring that the checks that need to be done are included in the pipeline. So when, let's say, in the self-service kind of scenarios, the developers are onboarding delivery of their service or application, when they onboard it, so the pipeline or workflow that they include for their delivery, deriving from some kind of a templates or the predefined structure by the organization, must include those guardrails. Like the static code analysis must be done, or the results for the binary scans must be done, etc. So that's the first step. Ensure that the guardrails are there and ensure that the developers, when they want to make changes to the pipeline, add additional steps, being able to modify this pipeline, because there is always some need to say break down the tests into multiple set of tests that are run in parallel, or add an additional deployment stage or things like that. So when they make these changes to this pipeline, you want to ensure that the guardrails are there. And the second one is to provide the gating mechanism. When these checks fail, we want to stop the delivery from going into the production environments and have those things resolved before they move forward. And the last but not least is the specific policies that are set up for these pipelines. So these policies as a set of rules that apply to data from coming from certain DevOps tools in the ecosystem should be imported as a library, and then it should not be necessary to recreate these policies or writing these rules on delivery of each of these applications. There should be something like a common library that they can use to make it easy for onboarding them. So what are the requirements? How do we achieve these? Right? What we have seen is if there is a way for us to specify pipeline as a code. So these steps that we are talking about in the delivery pipeline, there should be a way for us to identify what steps are being done in what order, whether they are being done in parallel, what is the sequence of them. That ability should be there for us to ensure that the guardrails are set in the delivery pipeline for the software delivery. And the second one is there is a diverse set of tools in the DevOps ecosystem. Within an organization, we sometimes see 10 or more DevOps tools that are involved in the software delivery to the production. And these can be tools like Jira, ServiceNow, or build tools like Jenkins, or security tools for the Sonar Cube or AppScan for dynamic scans, or many number of tools that come into the play. We should be able to have the ability to get the data from these tools as part of the delivery context and act on them. And the last one is the pipeline policy as a code. This is what we were talking about, using systems like Open Policy Agent, which has a standard way of specifying these rules based on the data. Simply set up these rules. Since we know what type of data comes from each one of the tools within the ecosystem, we can specify these rules in the policy, and that can be imported into application delivery pipelines by different applications within the organization. Different dev groups can adopt these policies, and the policies can be defined by the central group, and you want to ensure these policies are versioned and a specific version is being applied at any given point in time. So by doing these steps, we can now achieve end-to-end security and compliance for the software delivery, which also allows the developers to do self-service for their own applications, reducing the burden on the central team to have to get involved in the security practices and evaluating for each of these deliveries with individual development teams. So one additional thing that also we start seeing is after the deployment is done, we also want to ensure that the software that is actually deployed has the compliance part of it. For example, there are some policy packs we can have for the Google environment, public cloud environments with their VPCs and the Kubernetes, like GKE, and similar policies for the AWS and EKS kind of environments that we can apply continuously for the software that is being deployed. For example, the load balancer policies, or firewall rules, or SSL certificates, or the container structure that's being deployed in the Kubernetes environment. So by applying all these, we can have end-to-end automation and have the confidence and reliability in being able to deliver software faster. Should we go to the next one? Okay, summary. To summarize, for automating these steps for continuous compliance and security automation, we want to be able to integrate security checks in the continuous delivery pipeline. It should not be a parallel process. It should be an integrated process in your delivery. And also to ensure that the guardrails are there, that the specific tests that need to be done for the security or any functional parts needs to be there as part of the delivery pipeline. And the last but not least is the admission checks, essentially ensure that these results from these tests are verified and they conform to the policies of the organization. Ash, you want to add anything here?
No, that was terrific. I think you've ended on a high, which is what I wanted you to do. The other thing I would add there, if you do these things, we can identify and remediate security findings early in the continuous delivery pipeline and not later in the continuous delivery pipeline. But then that's terrific. So I think we can probably go to questions. So let me have a look at the Q&A. If you haven't already, please enter some questions. I have two questions I can see here, and Gopi, I'll give you first bash at either of them. So the first one is, what security tool integrations do we currently support?
Yeah, we support multiple tools right now. So think for the static scanning, like SonarQube, binary scanning, X-ray, dynamic scan like AppScan, and we support few other tools in our integrations. Essentially, we have the ability to expose the results of this data with RBAC from these tools for within the context of the delivery chain, public chain, and then allow you to specify the rules using Rego files, which is the open policy agent structure on the data from these tools. You can have that integrated as part of your delivery pipeline.
Right, and there's a second question here. It's probably an overlap with the first. Do you also look into open source scanning and vulnerability management, so open source tooling around this?
That's a good question. So one of the things that we do is integrate with the security tools in the DevOps ecosystem. And we recommend some tools, but we don't do them ourselves. So if you are currently using Black Duck or tools like that, we integrate with those to do the scanning, but we don't provide the scanning tool ourselves.
Cool. Next question. Is OpsumX built for large enterprises or small teams as well? How would you position our abilities?
Oh, yeah, so one of the things that we see is the small teams also need that visibility. And as we talked about these steps in terms of pipeline as code and guardrails with rule specification, well, small teams are essentially looking for the visibility and being able to have the rules on top. So you don't actually have to have the entire delivery tool chain for getting partial benefits for the visibility. So our tool is also built for small teams that can plug into their current delivery system and get the visibility for their supply chain of the software delivery. It's primarily built for large enterprises. For the entire tool chain, it fits well with self-service with a large number of developer teams, but also works with smaller teams for the visibility and supply chain visibility, basically.
Very good. There's a great question here from participant 997. I wish I could know who these people are. How do you manage regulatory compliance? And he's put in brackets GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, etc.
So if you see these regulatory requirements, there's this set of requirements specified in the doc, on the processes, as well as the requirements at the deployment time. So because we have this ability to have the policy packs that can be customized, for each of the regulatory requirements, organizations can customize these rules based on their processes and apply them. So essentially being customizing the policy packs with the OPA and applying those there.
Right, yeah, I agree. Another question, how can you enforce security at the enterprise level while allowing for business unit level flexibility? I think you touched a bit upon this, actually.
Yes. So one of the ways we support the system is being the policies defined at the enterprise level that would apply to all the delivery chains. And at the same time, you can have extended policies. So it's a separate set of policies that you can apply to the delivery at the individual unit. So this will not override the organizational centralized policies, but these policies can be add-on. So you can think of them as a small set at the organization that requires certain checks, but individual units can add on to them and then provide additional checks or additional requirements on them.
Perfect. And I think this could be the final question. With tools like Jenkins that basically allow anyone to create his or her own deployment pipeline, how do you enforce the scanning in the pipeline?
So that's one of the tricky issues with the Jenkins, which is where if we cannot have the steps that have self-contained functionality, we cannot totally enforce the requirements there. So if you do not have this ability to do the pipeline as code, so then what you're left with is essentially verification at the time of the deployment. You cannot provide these guardrails at the time where your pipelines are being created, but at the time of the deployments, because now we can integrate with different DevOps tools in the tool chain, you can apply policies on that at the time of the deployment and say, is this check done? Is the other check done? Is the results are good? And only then allow for the deployment. So you can integrate that kind of a policy check at the end. The thing that you won't be able to do is the ability to have these guardrails in the pipeline to scan beforehand to tell the application delivery pipeline groups to say you're missing these checks here.
Excellent. And there's one more. I said there'd be one more, but and this one's an easy one. Is your SaaS, is it SaaS or on-premise product? Is it a SaaS or on? I'll let you answer that one. I can answer it too, but I'll let you answer that one.
You can answer it, Ash.
Oh, we support both SaaS and on-premise. And in fact, we're currently running a trial. If you go to the homepage, you can sign up for ISD SaaS trial if you're interested. Okay, there's one more from participant 216. How can you automate the creation of controls based on the security frameworks that have been implemented?
I'm trying to understand the.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So is it that if the organization already has a security framework that is defined, and if it is codified in terms of a policy, then you can have that enforced as part of the delivery pipeline. And so once you create the delivery pipeline, the controls can get invoked and use the organization defined controls. If those security frameworks are not codified, it's more of a specification saying thou shalt do this, then we would go ahead and implement it through the policy as a code and define them as a policies at the organization level that will be applied to all the delivery pipelines within that organization. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but.
Well, that's where I was going. I think the key takeaway for me with security frames, if you can codify it, or it is something that can be codified, and we have an opportunity to do something. Okay. A few more questions coming in. We still have some time, so I'm going to give it a little bit. Yeah, convert the framework. This was a follow-up to that question. They want to convert the framework that has been adopted into a framework using artificial intelligence.
I see. So that two ways to think about it. You already have a rules-based framework, and so you think of that as an expert system. Now, once you have that framework, you can apply the machine learning on top of what you already have. So it basically goes and learns from the systems that you're applying and the data from the open source or third-party systems that it already knows, and you can apply on top of it. So bottom line is if you have a expert systems or the rules-based system that's already been implemented, You can have that and then have the machine learning based system on top of it that will enhance or make suggestions onto the security requirements for your system on top of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So last question. I don't know, again, participant 997, I'm like referring to you all as numbers. Security patches, version related issues, recent one on logging, how to ensure updates.
Yeah, so this is the one we want to strive for, right? So there are two parts of the question where how do you quickly send updates, patch updates to your system, make sure anything that comes up can be updated as quickly as we can. So those are the delivery pipelines, ensuring all the checks and making sure the approvals are there for the deployment. The second part of it is, hey, I already have a system that is up and running. How can we detect which parts of the system needs to be updated? And can we set that? Can we go ahead and update them immediately, right? So this is where the visibility comes in. Once you have the supply chain, the delivery visibility available to you, it would be fairly straightforward to identify which parts of your application that's currently deployed needs updates. And then because we have these pipelines that are constructed that are completely automated in a reliable way, you can then apply any of the patches to your system and ensure that the target system has all the fixes that are needed for your applications. Essentially, having that visibility and being integrated into your DevOps ecosystem allows you to quickly react and apply all these patches there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Without the visibility, this is not possible. You need that visibility to ensure that you can reach out and update the systems of record. Okay, well, I want to thank you, Gopi. I want to thank Cody as well for the opportunity to present today's session on how customers use DevSecOps for continuous compliance and security automation. I want to thank everyone who's participated, asked questions. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Gopi, anything else?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ash. Thank you, Cody. It was a pleasure spending time with you guys. Thank you for participating.
All right. Cheerio.
Ash and Gopi, thank you so much for taking the time to put together this presentation, for answering every question we received, and just for coming on the show today. So I really appreciate everything that you guys do. I'd like to remind our audience that this session was recorded. You can find the recording living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. And you should be receiving an email shortly with a link to access that on-demand recording as well. So we do have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give away. Our first winner is Quinette D. Our second winner is Julie M. Our third winner is Rushdeen M. And our fourth and final winner is Michael M. So congratulations to the 4 of you. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. And if you don't see an email, just check your spam folder. I would like to extend our gratitude to OpsMX for sponsoring this webinar. And as always, my final thanks goes to you, our audience. We appreciate you taking your time to be here with us. We ask for just one extra moment of your time to fill out a quick post-webinar survey, and we hope to see you at an upcoming Techstrong Learning webinar. Everyone have a great rest of your day. And Ash, Gopi, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.